A Course in Miracles. Lesson 10. My thoughts do not mean anything. This idea applies to all the thoughts of which you are aware, or become aware in the practice periods. The reason the idea is applicable to all of them is that they are not your real thoughts. We have made this distinction before, and will do so again. You have no basis for comparison as yet. When you do, you will have no doubt that what you once believed were your thoughts did not mean anything. This is the second time we have used this kind of idea. The form is only slightly different. This time the idea is introduced with my thoughts instead of these thoughts, and no link is made overtly with the things around you. The emphasis is now on the lack of reality of what you think you think. This aspect of the correction process began with the idea that the thoughts of which you are aware are meaningless, outside rather than within, and then stress their past rather than their present status. Now we are emphasizing that the presence of these thoughts means that you are not thinking. This is merely another way of repeating our earlier statement that your mind is really a blank. To recognize this is to recognize nothingness when you think you see it. As such, it is the prerequisite for vision. Close your eyes for these exercises and introduce them by repeating the idea for today quite slowly to yourself. Then add, "This idea will help to release me from all that I now believe." The exercises consist, as before, in searching your mind for all the thoughts that are available to you, without selection or judgment. Try to avoid classification of any kind. In fact, if you find it helpful to do so, you might imagine that you are watching an oddly assorted procession going by, which has little, if any, personal meaning to you. As each one crosses your mind, say, "My thought about blank does not mean anything. My thought about blank does not mean anything." Today's thought can obviously serve for any thought that distresses you at any time. In addition, 5 practice periods are recommended, each involving no more than a minute or so of mind searching. It is not recommended that this time period be extended, and it should be reduced to half a minute or less if you experience discomfort. Remember, however, to repeat the idea slowly before applying it specifically, and also to add, "This idea will help to release me from all that I now believe." Lesson 10. My thoughts do not mean anything. And somehow it already feels like the year just started. Time does that. Or rather, the idea of time does that. Lesson 10 arrives faster than expected, and it lands heavier than expected. Because this one doesn't negotiate. It doesn't refine thinking. It doesn't improve thoughts. It removes their authority entirely. My thoughts do not mean anything. At first, that can sound dismissive or even threatening. But the Course is not insulting the mind. It is liberating it. These thoughts that arise all day long feel intimate. They feel personal. They feel authored. They feel like me. And yet they pass like clouds across a sky that never changes. The Course makes a radical claim here. These are not real thoughts. They are not your thoughts. They are what happens when real thought is crowded out. That is why the distinction shifts from these thoughts to my thoughts. Not to personalize them, but to expose the assumption behind them. The assumption that thinking is happening at all. The Course says something quietly explosive. The presence of these thoughts means you are not thinking. That line is easy to miss, but it undoes an entire identity. Imagine a room filled wall to wall with static, hissing, crackling, constant noise. Then imagine someone saying, "There is no music playing here."
Not because music doesn't exist, but because the noise has drowned it out. Real thoughts are like music. They are simple. They are whole. They do not argue. They do not defend. They do not narrate. They do not rehearse yesterday or audition tomorrow. They are thoughts of innocence, thoughts of love, thoughts of unity, thoughts of peace. They are still present. They have never left. But the mind has learned to fill the space with commentary, judgment, prediction, memory, fear disguised as planning, guilt disguised as responsibility.
So when the Course says the mind is really blank, it is not calling it empty. It is calling it unobstructed, blank like a clear sky, blank like still water, blank like a stage before the actors rush on with costumes and scripts. That is why the exercise matters, not to fight thoughts, not to analyze them, not to replace them with better ones, but to watch them pass without believing them. Like standing on a bridge as a parade goes by. Some floats are dramatic, some are frightening, some are sentimental, some look important, but none of them are you. This thought does not mean anything, not because it is evil, but because it is not real. Specific application matters because belief is specific. The mind doesn't cling to thoughts in general. It clings to this thought about death, about the body, about money, about the world, about the self. So the lesson meets the mind where it hides and gently removes meaning one hook at a time. Not to leave nothing behind, but to reveal what was always there. Real thought does not need effort. It does not need repetition. It does not need defense. It simply shines when the noise subsides. This is why the lesson says it will release you from all that you now believe. Because belief is the weight, meaning is the burden, and peace was never buried. It was only crowded out. My thoughts do not mean anything, and in that recognition, real thinking finally has room to return.